In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this adorable little star cake topper. Hi, it's Karolyn. I'm a professional cake decorator, and on this channel, I share my tips and tricks and ways that I bake and decorate cakes to help you along your journey. So if you'd like to join me, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you can get notified whenever I release a new video. First things first, it's the middle of January and it's like the wind chill outside is like 3 degrees. That's why I'm like all in my winter gear. It is so cold. And I want to take the time and just thank everybody. You guys have been you guys are just so awesome. You're so supportive and I love seeing, why can't I think of my words? You guys have sent me pictures of the cakes that you've made from watching my videos, and I'm like a proud mama. You guys are doing so well, and I'm so blessed to be able to help you guys along your way. Now, the star that I'm making in this video was actually a request from Jaquetta, and I hope I'm saying your name right, but that's how I think you say it. If I said it wrong, please correct me. But I did it on a Grinch cake a while ago, and I'm actually making the Grinch cake again, and I want to show you how I make the topper. What you're going to want to do is print out the star and the number, the size that you want them to be. So this is going on top of a 5-inch cake. So I printed this out. This, is that a diameter? It's not a diameter. It's not a circle. This length from point to point is 5 inches. And the number 5, you have to make sure you have to measure this little part here and then make sure that the number can fit in there. Okay, so use your Microsoft Word. I'm going to link this star in the description below, so you could just click that link to get the star. However, you know, print it out the size that you want. So let's get into the video. All right, to start, I just want to color the fondant. I have marshmallow fondant here. I have a video on how I make my homemade marshmallow fondant, and I will link that in the description below. I have a little bit of shortening, and I'm just going to put on a paper towel, wipe it on a paper plate. That way the fondant is not going to stick to the paper plate in the microwave. And I'm just going to take off a chunk, and I always say chunk is a gross word, but I keep saying it. So take off a chunk. That should be good. And I'm going to pop this in the microwave for about, I would say like 10 to 15 seconds, flip it over, and then do another 10 seconds or so just to soften it. I have a little cornstarch I'm just going to sprinkle on the countertop so it doesn't stick. This is cornstarch, it's not powdered sugar. Powdered sugar will make everything sticky, so use cornstarch when working with fondant. All right, now this is much easier to work with. It's soft. My hands are clean. I'm just going to get some Crisco in my hands so the fondant doesn't stick to my hands and just start kneading this together. Actually, also putting some Crisco on the counter helps prevent it from sticking. Now, before I add the coloring, I want to add some Tylose powder. This is actually empty, but I love this container, so I'm going to just refill it. Tylose powder or CMC powder helps fondant set really hard, because if I just use fondant like this, it's drooping, it's hard to work with. It just makes it easier to work with, and I want the topper to dry rock hard, so I need to add some Tylose powder. I've been actually using some of this Wilton Tylose powder, same thing, and I'm just refilling this container just because I'd rather work with a smaller container like this. And some of it is falling out, and that's fine. That's what I'll use. So this is not good for demonstration purposes, but do you see this little bit that has fallen out onto the fondant? I'm going to start to knead that in. And I can use a little more as well. And I'm just sprinkling a little bit on there. It really is not enough. A little bit goes a long way with this stuff. Now, you don't have to just use marshmallow fondant. You can use store-bought fondant if you want as well, and just add some Tylose powder to it. Now I want to color it gold. This bottle looks disgusting, but it's not. It's just, that's what happens with coloring. So Alan Tetriel, I don't know if he still makes this, but I will try to find a similar color and link it below. It's just not as harsh as a yellow. It's more gold than yellow. That's why it's called gold. So just adding a little bit and kneading that together. So now for the star, I want to roll the fondant out about 1/2 inch thick. And for the number, I want to roll out the thin fondant. So what I want to do is just take a little piece off and sprinkle down some cornstarch and just roll this really thin, and I'm going to cut the number out of this. So as you can see, this is rolled out super thin. I'm going to set this aside. Now I want to roll this out about a 1/2 inch thick. Now, I've said this before in my videos, this is going to be on top of the cake, right? So if you just knead this, flatten it out and roll it out, the back is going to be so ugly. So how do we prevent that? So what you want to do, so you have a nice back and front, knead this a couple times, right? And roll it. And then you're going to have a nice flat side and an ugly side. So take the flat side, stretch it out a little bit, and then fold it in on itself. So now you have a flat top and a flat bottom, and both sides of your topper are going to be beautiful. Sprinkle down some cornstarch, and I want to roll this out. Now you have your picture here for reference. You need to make sure that you roll it out big enough for the star, and I'm actually going to add a little bottom piece here. So just making sure that you roll it out wide enough. And you could see this is about a 1/2 inch thick, which is perfect. And if I put the picture on top, it completely fits on here with a lot of room, and that's exactly what we need. So I'm going to let this sit out for about 20 minutes to let the Tylose powder start to harden the fondant, and then we will continue. All right, to start, first I want to draw the bottom part of the star that's going to go on here. This bottom part is just going to hide the skewer that we stick in here. So what I want to do, I have to turn this towards me so I can see it, but I'm going to do like a little triangle. I'm trying to make the lines even on either side. All right, so kind of a triangle. I just didn't start all the way in the point. I wanted it a little wider here so the skewer can go through. You will see what I mean as we do this. So now, first I'm going to trace the number. And I have my thin gold fondant here. And all the supplies I have a cutting board. I put a piece of non-skid pad underneath the cutting board. That way the cutting board's not going to slide around when I work with it. It's been happening so much. And ever since that I started using that non-skid pad, my life has just been so much better. I have a wet folded paper towel that I keep in the corner so I can wipe my tools off because the fondant starts to stick to the tools. The tools I'm using that I always have, I have an X-Acto knife. I have a needle tool, which I don't always use, but I always keep around. And I have a Dresden tool, my favorite tool. I'm not sure if Wilton makes these anymore. However, there are similar ones on the market, and I will link these below. I love this because it has two curved ends. One end is a little pointier, and one end is a little wider, and I can use it to trace onto fondant. Now, you have to make sure that your Tylose has set up in your fondant and your fondant is not too soft. And I'm just going to stick this paper on top of the fondant. Like I always say, make sure the fondant is completely underneath and that the number isn't hanging off the fondant. I've done it so many times where I start tracing and then I fall off the fondant because I didn't position it correctly. So just make sure the number is on there. And I'm going to trace around, pressing hard enough so I transfer the line onto the fondant. Make sure you just press, like I have a good medium pressure. If you press too hard, you're going to poke a hole in the fondant, and that hole is very difficult to cut out. Trust me, I've done it so many times and it's super annoying. So just using nice medium pressure and tracing the whole outline of the number. Don't just lift the paper up, hold it down with one hand and peel it back. That way you can let the paper go back down and retrace any lines that haven't transferred, because if you just lift the paper up, then it's difficult to put it down in the right position. So you can see that that transferred. Now I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just cut this number out. And like always, anytime I cut anything out of fondant, there's usually just dirty, jagged edges. So I like to take my fingers and just run them over all of the edges, just to smooth out the cuts. When you take the time to smooth out your cuts, everything is just going to look so much more pretty and neat and clean. And now I'm grabbing the thicker fondant. If you do this and it's too soft, just let it sit out a little longer and then try it again. So you want to make sure that it's not super soft. You want it to be a little stiff so you can start to work with it. And that did not sound right. Anyway, so same thing, putting this on top, making sure the entire thing is on the fondant. Good. Now, I'm going to trace this star and make sure I trace this little base piece as well. So just start by tracing the outline. And then trace the bottom piece as well. So now I'm going to do this inside line, but I don't think I want to do this line until I cut it out, and I will just eyeball it, making sure I have an even border the whole way around. You'll see what I mean. Peel it back, that's much better. When I cut this out, I'm going to cut up to here and stop, and then cut around the bottom here and then cut down. I'm not cutting this whole part off. We want this to be attached, okay? I have my X-Acto knife handy, and whenever I cut into thicker fondant, I don't like to cut like I just did the number by putting it down to the board and cutting around, because look, when you turn and, when you try to cut, it just messes up the fondant. So what I like to do, and if you've seen my other videos, you know, I like to make a shallow cut first. So make sure you hold the knife straight up and down. If you hold it on an angle, the back part of the piece is going to be thinner than the front, and it's not going to be structurally sound. So hold it straight up and down, follow the lines, and I'm just sawing up and down to try to get the knife through the fondant without messing up the fondant. And just do a shallow cut the whole way around. I'm gonna have to turn this towards me so I can see it. Now, with this bottom piece, I'm stopping where that little tail is that we drew. So I'm not going all the way to the center. Come down and cut out the base. Now we have our line as a guide, and this will be much easier to cut out since we already have our lines in here. So holding it straight up and down again, stick it all the way down to the board, and stars are kind of easy to cut because they're just straight lines. So just drag it down using that line as a guide. As the fondant starts to stick to my knife, just wipe it off on the wet paper towel. I like to kind of cut straight down on the ends just to get cleaner cuts at the points. Not completely necessary, but I just found that it's a little better when you do that. So by the time I bring it over here to cut, that last part was already cut, so the point is a little neater. I hope that makes sense. Now that this is cut out, I don't know if you can see. I'll pick up and show you. See how there's like, the cuts are not nice. You know, we're gonna have to work with this a little bit. So to make it pretty, flip it over. I like to take my fingers and run it around the edges to just kind of smooth everything out. Now I want to get my Dresden tool because it has a really thin section here. So I can go where these cuts are a little ugly, like in these corners, and what I'm doing, I'm pressing the fondant back down on itself to get rid of these weird lines that my X-Acto knife made in the fondant. So if your fondant was super soft, you wouldn't be able to pick it up and work with it. That's why you need to make sure that the Tylose has start to set. This fondant is still a little softer than I would prefer to work with, but it's still working. I want to get my paper back, and I'm going to put this star back on top of this paper because look, it got out of shape as we were working with it, and you want to realign it. So get your picture back and then just put the star back on top and try to line it. I have to turn this towards me so I could see it, but try to align it exactly as it was so it's nice and straight. And I also forgot, when I flipped it over, I want to take my fingers and smooth out these edges as well. I just feel like it looks so much better if you just round the edges a little bit and smooth them out so the cut isn't so harsh. All right, and now I'm just going to remove this so I can show you. I want to do this inside line just to give it a little more visual interest. So I want to take the thin, pointier end of my Dresden tool, not the thicker one. If you don't have a Dresden tool, you can use a toothpick or something that comes to a point. And I just want to get in here, and I got to get close so my head might get in the way, but I want to do an even border the whole way around. So starting at one of the points, and you just need to use your eyes and a steady hand to get this border on there. All right, and now that I have the shallow line, basically, I can deepen it. That's why I like that this has a little curve to it on the bottom. So I'm just gonna stick the curved part, make sure the point doesn't go in, but stick the curved part in that line and just try to deepen the lines a little bit. Today is Monday. This cake is due for Saturday, so there's plenty of time. And you wanna make this a couple days in advance. All right, so now I want to, before this stiffens up while the fondant is still soft, I want to put a skewer in here, because if I wait until it stiffens up, it's going to be very difficult to get it through without breaking it. So I have, this is an 8-inch skewer. It's a thinner skewer, which is going to be better to use a thinner one, because the thicker ones, it's going to pop out the top or the bottom. So I just want to wet the bottom half of this. And now I want to get down on eye level and make sure that I'm sticking it straight, exactly in the middle, and holding it straight, not on any kind of angle. And what I want to do is basically I want to screw it in here. So I'm twisting it while I'm pushing it in. If you've seen any of my other videos, you see that this is how I do it. So I'm taking my hand and I'm twisting the skewer as I'm pushing it. And you want to make sure that you are keeping it completely straight so it doesn't pop out the top or the bottom. So if you start to feel it or start to see it pop up, you can take your finger and press it down a little bit, right? And then I like to flip it over and again, twist and push, and then flip it over and twist and push, twist and push. This way you're making sure that you can't see the skewer on either side as you're pushing it through. Now I'm going to put it on this little cutting board and set it back on the picture. And I'm just going to reshape it so it's the same shape as the picture. And now I'm just going to let it dry overnight like this, and then tomorrow I'm going to flip it over and let it dry for another day. Don't put it in the refrigerator, just leave it sit out and let air get to it so it can dry it really hard. All right, so I flipped this over and let it dry on the other side, and now it's pretty hard and it's going to hold its shape. So I want to attach the 5. I could have actually done this earlier, I just didn't, but I want to attach the 5. I have a little bit of piping gel here, and just get a little bit on. You don't want to put too much on because you don't want the piping gel to seep out from underneath and get onto the star. So just a little bit, just enough to make it stick. And then just center it on there. Perfect. Now I want to paint this gold. So I'm going to start with the back side. I like to put a paper towel down when I do this just because it gets a little messy. Flip it over. And in order to paint gold, I have this Rollcom Super Gold. I can find this and link this below. I think I get it. Where do I get it? Oh, sugardelights.com. And what I like to do, I just have a plate and a paintbrush. I've already been using this gold this week, so I just kept this plate. tap the lid on the side to just get a little bit of the powder out. Lemon extract evaporates super quick, so if you paint with lemon extract, it'll dry really fast, or you can use a high alcohol proof vodka. But I'm just going to pour a little lemon extract in here and make a little paste, like Ross, make a pair of paste pants. Any Friends fans out there? All right. So now when I start painting, I want to make sure that I get all of the undersides. So I'm painting up the sides first, and you got to kind of get low with it and make sure you can get into all the little crevices. And then just paint the back. And just let this dry for, I don't know, about 3 minutes, and then we'll flip it over and paint the other side. And this is dry, so I can flip this over and finish. Now, if you find that this paste starts to get too thick, add a little bit more of the extract. If it thins out too much, just wait a couple minutes for the alcohol to evaporate and it'll thicken up. And sometimes if you can see streaks from the paintbrush, just let it dry for like 3 minutes and then add another coat. And there's your gold star topper. So here you go. Here's your adorable little star cake topper. And how cute is this? This is actually a design that I did a couple years ago, and it was one of my highly requested designs. Let me put this down. I actually have videos on, I just posted a video recently on how to make the Grinch face. And I also have videos on how to make those little curlies. I'm addicted to curlies. I make them all the time. And I have videos on how to make the names and how to use edible images, because Cindy and Max are edible images. So I can link all those videos below if you want to see the different techniques that I use to do this cake. And I just want to make a note, make sure that you put the skewer in while the fondant, you have to find a happy medium. The fondant can't be too soft because you're going to distort the shape. And if it's too hard, it's difficult to get it in there. And that did not sound right. But, you know, you have to find that perfect softness to be able to get that skewer in there. And so I think that's it for now. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. And you can follow me on social media. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and I have my website. And I will link everything below as well. And if you want to stick around, you can watch these videos next. Am I pointing at them? And hit the subscribe button and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it and got something out of it. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. Don't be so serious. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.